Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Hormonally Speaking. This week, we're going to dive into a more serious topic that I think is, not that we don't talk serious topics on here all the time, but I think that is a really important part of not only our hormonal health, but our health overall, particularly, if you were born, and live in this world as a woman. So many of us have been impacted by how we should eat, what we think we should eat in order to have a particular body type, right? Because of the cultural just implications and the things that it puts on us in order to be a woman in this world, and how many of us that really has affected in such a negative way, and also impacted our hormones and all kinds of other parts of our health. And particularly, obviously, you can be any age and deal with an eating disorder. But I know a lot of, my friends are concerned raising daughters into a world that still has a lot of the pressures that were on us when we were younger. It shifted some, but there's still a lot there, and they're insidious. So I think this conversation is like super, super important to have. And I'm excited to talk to my guest, Sarah Speers, who's an emotional eating coach, energy worker, and trained psychotherapist. Her mission is to empower souls to do the inner work to uncover and improve the root mental, emotional, and energetic factors affecting health and happiness. Over the course of 10 years, she has worked with thousands of people to help them strengthen their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual bodies. She offers a unique approach to coaching and energy work, fusing traditional and alternative modalities to help process emotional wounds, reprogram the subconscious, rebalance the body's energy systems, and creating lasting change with regards to how one thinks, feels, and behaves. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and have this conversation with you.
Yeah, so important, as I was just kind of droning on and on about at the beginning here. And I think there's sort of layers to what we maybe call disordered eating, right? So I think I can identify with maybe the disordered eating way, umbrella, maybe a little bit more, because I never had like a flat out eating disorder, right? What we've sort of traditionally classified as eating disorders. But disordered eating can kind of range this whole, big spectrum of what a lot of women, I think, will fall on that spectrum at some point in their lives, unfortunately. So let's talk a little bit about that and talk about what emotional eating is for those that don't quite understand it.
Yeah, that was really well said about the spectrum
Mhm.
because there are clinical diagnoses for eating
Mhm.
disorders, and most of the people I work with don't meet the diagnostic criteria
Mhm.
for a clinical eating disorder,
Mhm. Mhm.
fortunately,
Yeah.
but they're still struggling with their relationship with food, and that can show up in different ways. And so when we're looking at emotional eating, that can sometimes be normalized in our culture where we see in TV shows, oh, it's that time of the month, or you're
Mhm.
upset and get a pint of ice cream. And
Yeah.
it's kind of this like joke that we all kid about. But really, it can actually be quite shameful, the pattern, and something that can cause distress.
Mhm.
And ultimately, what we're seeing is that instead of feeling our feelings, a
Mhm.
lot of us go ahead and feed our feelings. And
Mhm.
if we engage in that pattern consistently enough over time, it becomes an automated habit, which
Right.
means it's happening unconsciously or mindlessly. And that's where it feels really distressing because it's almost the sense of I have no control over this.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, what a lot of women find is that, like, the millisecond they're feeling stress or overwhelmed, or there's this urge to cry or get angry, it's like because they've trained themselves to eat, the brain is just immediately signaling for them to
Mhm.
find food. And you find yourself in the cabinets or in the fridge, or suddenly the bag of potato chips, you were only going to have a handful and the whole bag is gone. And
Yeah.
it feels really, really overwhelming and frustrating because there's a sense of I can't control myself around food.
Mhm. Right.
And then that can spiral into, feeling shame about yourself, feeling a sense of guilt about not having willpower or
Yes.
control. And then that also can perpetuate this mental obsession where it's like, okay, tomorrow I need to be good, or I'm never
Yep.
going to eat this food again. And then we go into this mental like Olympics where we're driving ourselves crazy because we're trying to figure out how to eat better or eat good so that we don't continue to turn to food to self-soothe.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the awareness and you don't have the tools as to why you're engaging in that pattern in the first place, oftentimes our strategies to stop emotional eating, which is, I'm just not going to eat that
Right.
food,
Right.
actually results in us probably overeating that food even more.
Yeah.
And so it's not an effective approach. And then we just dig ourselves in a deeper hole.
Yeah. I think probably so many people that are listening to this can relate to that. I love the way that you broke that down. It made me think about, a time in my life. So I was vegan at the time. And, I understood much later that my body chemistry that did not work well for, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of the sort of physical aspects of, the emotional eating. But, I can remember that I would, be good, be good, be good, quote unquote, good, 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 eating the rice. And then I would just be like, okay, I'm gonna get like vegan cookies and like vegan ice cream and just start eating it, right? And just eat it and eat it and eat it. And it's that same thing. It's like a weird thing, right? Because you're like, oh, this is quote unquote healthy food that I'm binging on
Right.
essentially, but that literal feeling of being out of control, and even as you're eating sometimes thinking, "Tomorrow, like, I might as well finish this off because then it won't be here tomorrow, and I can start fresh," you
Right. And
know?
I'm never going to do this
Never
again.
doing it again,
And I
absolutely.
always joke, yeah, somehow I'm just going to wake up tomorrow with like a new brain and new
Right,
willpower and just no desire for these delicious foods.
right,
That's just going to miraculously disappear. And it's,
right.
and then that's where we get frustrated because then we do it again.
Yes.
And there's this feeling of, I can't trust myself.
Right,
Or,
right,
if I say I'm going to do something, I can't seem to do it.
right.
And we really get stuck in self loathing or judging self, which isn't
Yeah.
helpful.
Well, and I think too, we've been taught so often and it's reinforced that it's about willpower, right? And so that's where we can get into that. If I can just pull on my willpower, and then when you don't pull on your willpower, then it's you being wrong and not strong enough and all these things. And it's so, willpower is a very tiny bit of this like huge thing, right? That and willpower, I mean, it's just interesting when you look at the science of it. We have sort of when our I like to say our coffers are full in the morning, we quote unquote have more willpower because we're full, right? We've hopefully slept well. We have just before the day has come in and sort of taken everything out of us, then we are feel as if we're in control of eating. And then it's by the end of the day when you've been zapped dry because you don't have anything left in the well, and that's when you're just like in F it mode, as I call it. And I think people can really get caught in that spiral too, or that just way of being that I think is really tough because that becomes like a daily consistent thing. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah, the evening times are typically the most vulnerable time for
Mhm,
people.
mhm,
And it is because we have a limited amount of willpower that if that is spent throughout the day, resisting the urge to snap at a coworker and, passing up the vending machine at work and,
mhm.
making all of these decisions throughout the day, by the time you get home, you've spent all of that energy and you don't have the capacity necessarily to make an intentional or empowered choice.
Mhm.
And on top of that, the other word that I really focus on is regulation. And what is
Mm.
your body's like baseline? And
Mhm.
if you woke up feeling really regulated and grounded, and then the day passes and there's this accumulation of stress, everybody's body has this window of tolerance. And eventually, when
Mhm.
you pass that threshold and your body starts to become dysregulated, and you haven't taken a moment to pause or center or take a few breaths or de-stress the physiological body, right? The
Mhm.
stress
Mhm.
of the body itself,
Mhm.
then you've also crossed a threshold by the end of the day where your body is desperate to find a way to come back into its state of regulation. And if
Right.
you don't have other tools and processes to support yourself in finding that center again,
Yeah.
you are even more likely to then reach for food to self-soothe, because that tends to be a default choice that the brain will just naturally make, because food does have, the capacity to help us feel better
100%.
in the moment. And
Yep.
so that's a very real
Real
effect.
fast, easy,
Yeah,
easy quote unquote way to do, yeah, to do it.
exactly. But there's other ways
Yeah.
that if you integrate throughout the day these micro moments where
Yeah.
you're breathing, moving, meditating, tapping, the laundry list of these self-care practices, then that quote unquote willpower, your reserve, is going to be more full at the
Mhm.
end of the
Mhm.
day, and you're
Mhm.
gonna have the capacity to actually be able to make choices that feel aligned with what's truly going to help you in that moment to feel your
Mm.
best. And maybe
Mhm.
that choice is to nourish yourself, but
Mhm.
maybe it's to actually rest or go for a walk or talk to a
Mhm.
friend, right? It's like you have more capacity to make those intentional choices.
Choices, yeah. And I'm so glad that we're talking about this particular, area, because I try and always, in working with clients, tell them, breaks throughout the day are so supportive to your body, right? And I think people get that, on the sort of intellectual level, but they will skip over it, including myself, when you get busy, right? You just don't recognize the importance of doing these things consistently and how much a difference it can mean by taking 5 minutes. I my always recommendation, if people can, is around that 3 p.m. time, right? When we're sort of, most of us are naturally declining in energy anyway, and just take 5 minutes of breath work, meditation, EFT, any of these, start there. But even thinking about, what we deal with on a daily basis in terms of stress these days, having just a few different moments throughout the day, how that can change everything, and coming back to our hormones again and again. I talk about it all the time on the podcast. We need safety and security in our bodies in order for our hormones to work correctly. And this is, you're telling that,
It's
you're telling
exactly the
people,
same.
yeah, yeah,
It's
you're telling
exactly
people
the
what to
same.
do to help support that.
Yeah, they go hand in hand,
Yeah.
because the safety and security in your body is also directly correlated with eating habits.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, we've built this attachment to a lot of foods, where food is a source of comfort, or food can be an object that symbolizes love and safety. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, if growing up, your mom always used to bake you, these muffins every
Yeah.
day, and it's like you
Yeah.
associate the muffins with mom's love and the safety of home. Then, as
Mm-hmm.
an adult, like if your body doesn't feel safe and it's seeking safety, and you're
Mm-hmm.
not giving it to yourself, or there isn't a way that you can experience that in your nervous system, we will often reach for food
Yeah.
subconsciously
Yep.
to get a sense of comfort and safety. And that is a deeply embedded like patterning or pairing in the subconscious. A lot of the work I do with clients is working to actually break the
Mm-hmm.
emotional attachments we have to food, so that the brain is no longer associating foods as being the source of love or safety or comfort. Because once we can break that association, it's a lot easier to make different choices to achieve safety or to feel a
Absolutely.
sense of love. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, it's such a common thing, right? When the a kid is screaming, or, even if they've done something good, it's like, "Oh, you get a cookie, you get ice cream." And it really sets that up for so many of us, right? I mean, I can
Yeah.
think of sugary things as a child being such a just exciting part of life, right? And now, of course, we have those available sort of all of the time.
Right.
So that compounds how tough it can be sometimes.
Yeah, and we're not looking to take away the excitement of those things, but
Right.
it's really about adding in
Hmm.
other ways that we get those needs met, especially the emotional needs or the safety needs.
Yeah.
So it almost like crowds out food. Like for a lot
Right.
of people I work with, like food is the only thing they can think of that they do for pleasure, that they do for stress, to
Mm,
manage stress, that they have to help them through difficult times. It's like it
yeah.
becomes the crutch
Yeah.
when it's the only option that we know.
Right. Absolutely. So let's talk about some of the tools that you utilize with people, and sort of, also determining and figuring out what some of this stuff is connected to for them.
Yeah, that process is really fun. I always feel like a little bit of a detective when we're looking at what are the underlying root causes.
Mhm.
And that's where I use the 5 bodies of health model to help me and clients just navigate what's at play here,
Mhm.
right? And so we've got the physical body, which is looking at just what are your habits in general of how you take care of the body.
Mhm.
And, you pointed to like the impact of the vegan diet on your
Mhm.
eating habits. And
Mhm.
for a lot of people, there is this element of restriction or not actually getting enough calories or nutrition that fuels cravings. And that
Mhm.
can then lead to this like growing binge pattern. We've got the
Yep.
mental body, which is what's going on in your mind and what's all of the conditioning. So you've already pointed to like using food as a reward. I've
Mhm.
got a very long list, right, of all of the types of eating programming that we can experience growing up. Our
Mhm.
childhood environment is really important in forming our relationship with food. And some people grew up in home environments that had really strict and rigid food rules
Mhm.
where, sugar wasn't allowed at all. Other people grew up in home environments where, well, my brothers could eat whatever they wanted, but as a female, like I wasn't allowed to,
Right.
right? When they got put on a diet, or other homes had this kind of free for all. It was like we could eat whatever we wanted. And I was modeled emotional eating. So, really getting curious about the eating programming and the home environment around
Mhm.
food and the language around body is a super important area to
Mhm.
explore.
Mhm.
So that with that knowledge and awareness, we can begin to, again, go into the subconscious. And I use emotional freedom technique as a way to just create corrective experiences and
Mhm.
repattern some of the memories or the messaging that we
Mhm.
received.
Mhm.
We've got the emotional body, which is how are we processing our emotions? And especially for women, we've got a ton of repressed emotions, a lot of repressed anger, a lot of repressed grief and fear, and just, that builds up over your life. And so being able to understand when you reach for food, if it's to help you feel better, that there's likely something that doesn't feel good. And there's an opportunity for us to get curious and go into the body and
Mhm.
let the body show us the emotional energy that's needing to be processed and released. And then the last two are the energy body and the soul body. So with
Mhm.
energy, I'm really a huge advocate for energy hygiene and understanding, how to shield your energy, cleanse your energy, be aware of energy vampires, not
Mhm.
take on and absorb other people's energy,
Mhm.
which is so common for especially women caretakers.
Mhm.
We want to just take everyone's pain away, but the
Yes.
downside is we hold it
Yep.
in our bodies,
Yep.
and that can be really dangerous and a lot of times something you're doing outside of your conscious awareness.
Yeah.
So a lot of clearing. I use emotion code as a process to help release
Mm.
absorbed energies. And
Mhm.
then with the soul body, we're just looking at soul holes. So what are the kind of the fundamental needs of the soul? I talk
Mhm.
about soul hunger, and there's this like
Mhm.
the need to be nourished with intimate connections and with true love and a sense of purpose.
Mhm.
And if we aren't addressing the fundamental needs of the soul, then we often are trying to fill a void with
Yeah.
food. And when we can identify that, there's an opportunity to actually take action in your life to meet the needs of the soul so that you're not just eating mindlessly all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so beautiful. And everything that you said, fits in the same framework of what I do with clients around hormones. Right. And it's such a good reminder that, it's all a holistic process. I think that not saying we completely have the physical obviously taken care of, but we talk there's a lot of talk around the physical aspects. There's more talk these days around the emotional aspects of things. Thank goodness. It's still probably not as accepted as it needs to be, but we're getting better. But really talking about the energetic processes and the soul, purpose. I think that that's so key too, right? Yeah, what feeds your soul? What is not that you have to have a single big purpose in this life. I don't believe that, but what drives you, what fuels you, and that's
Exactly.
something that's so overlooked, right? And not talked about enough, and such a huge part of I think of the sadness and anger in this world, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I see a lot of women, and this was me as well, who
Mhm.
struggle with some form of disordered eating on the
Yeah.
spectrum, and there's a parallel with struggling with hormones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was at
Mm-hmm.
the peak of my eating disorder, I didn't have a period for 2 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, it didn't even dawn on me that that was a problem because I was
Right.
so steeped in the eating disorder that the impact on my physical body was lost on me. And then as I
Yes.
started my healing journey, I realized, oh, this is not normal.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
is clearly not working the way it's supposed to.
Right.
And I think I need to work on, you know, hormones
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
balancing my hormones. And that path of healing my eating disorder went hand in hand then with healing,
Yeah.
you know, my hormone imbalance. And so they are,
Absolutely.
you know, really interwoven.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about your eating disorder, what type of eating disorder you had and um I guess the process that you took on,
Mhm.
in figuring that out and healing it and yourself. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
mine, I mean, I kind of had this interesting spectrum of eating disorders, and I
Yeah.
had adult onset, so I was
Mm.
25 when I
Oh wow.
first, yeah, which is a little bit more uncommon.
Right, I was going to say it usually
Uh-huh.
stems younger, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
but for me, I had an adult onset, and it was this kind of perfect storm of um, going on a diet for the first time in my life and moving to a new place, and I had sort of this traumatic experience where my car was stolen with all of my belongings. And so I was by myself in a new place without a job, without a car, without support, like all of these factors that caused me to start to binge.
Right.
And over time, that led to binging and purging.
Yeah.
And so then I got really swept up into a pretty vicious cycle of bulimia,
Mm.
which, you know, kind of consumed me for 6 months, where it was living in even a denial that this was a problem.
Mm.
You know, you
Mhm.
can get
Mhm.
so enmeshed in it.
Mhm.
And then I had sort of this pivotal moment where I realized one day, like, oh, this is not healthy and normal. And I may actually die if I don't stop
Mhm.
this,
Mhm.
because I could feel the impact on my body.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so I just made a vow and commitment that I was going to do whatever it took to heal myself so that I could help others, because I never wanted anyone to suffer the way that I was.
Yeah.
And that just took me on this pretty broad journey where I was reading books, I was seeking therapy, I was trying all different alternative healing modalities.
Mhm.
I eventually went back to school to become a therapist
Mhm.
and was trained at an eating disorder center, and so was working with, you know, people who specialize in eating disorders. So I was really learning the ins and outs of it, and
Mhm.
you know, was able to benefit from that learning for myself, but also
Right.
then for the work that I do.
Right.
And that's why I integrate a lot of energy work into the work I do, because I found processes like tapping,
Mhm.
emotional freedom technique, and Reiki and emotion code, like all of these beautiful modalities that I stumbled upon were all key components to my own healing, because it was really helping me access a lot of the unprocessed emotional pain and
Mm.
trauma that I had been carrying that I didn't
Mhm.
even know was
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
and for anybody who does struggle with binging or purging, while the binge is a way to try to suppress or
Yeah.
numb or feel better, the purge is a way to try and get out of your body an
Mm.
energy or a feeling that like is uncomfortable, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so when that unconscious energy and trauma is present and we aren't aware and able to process it in healthy ways, what I was doing was reverting to binging and purging. And, you know, with that awareness, I realized, oh, this is why the inner work is such a key component to healing, because
Right.
without it, you're just dealing, you know, a lot of treatment will focus on just
Right. Right.
food and eating.
Right.
And that's an important piece, but that is really the symptom of the deeper layers.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say over the course of 5 years, you know, I
Yeah.
started to just gradually chip away at the inner work and do a lot of deep healing. And then eventually, you know, reached a place where over time the symptoms started to subside. And then there's just a period in time where you realize, oh my gosh. Like I can't remember the last time I had an episode, you know, and then
Yeah.
that just becomes the new norm, which is
Yeah.
like it no longer exists. And so
Yeah.
it's a
That's
beautiful space to
amazing.
be in.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing the trajectory too for
Yeah.
you. So, we've talked a decent amount about EFT on the podcast, but I'll just, say once again, for those that don't know what it is, that stands for emotional freedom technique. And I think a lot of people have heard of it as tapping, right?
Right.
So it's this like you tap in these different spots. And I always, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I like to think of it as somewhat similar to acupuncture in terms of certainly regulating the nervous system, opening up energy pathways where things may have gotten blocked and allowing, the processing of stuck emotions, things like that. Um, can you speak to body code? Because I'm not sure that everybody's aware of that.
Sure. Yeah, the body code emotion code is a process developed by Bradley Nelson, which he was a chiropractor. And essentially, it revolves around using muscle testing or energy testing. So the theory is if something is true for the body will have a strength present.
Mm-hmm,
And if
mm-hmm,
something is untrue or potentially harmful for the body, the muscles become weaker.
mm-hmm,
And so we can use this process called muscle testing to ask the body questions
mm-hmm,
to get information about what it might be holding.
mm-hmm,
So, for example, we could ask the body, do you have any trapped emotions or absorbed emotions contributing to your hormone imbalance or
mm-hmm,
contributing to your binging? And based on the strength of the muscles, when we
mm-hmm,
do muscle testing, we'll get a yes, no. And there's
mm-hmm,
this whole map and chart where we can then identify what are the specific emotions. Is this fear? Is it sadness? Is it grief? Is it overwhelm? And we can even ask the body, when did you experience this emotion? We could get
mm-hmm,
information such as, this is when you were a child, right? Is this, and we can start to paint a picture of
mm-hmm.
what the body is actually holding energetically and emotionally,
Right.
and its impact on the physiological symptoms or the mental symptoms that you're experiencing. And then this process uses a magnet to just neutralize essentially or clear those energies from the body. So the same way that a magnet would deactivate a credit card, for example,
Mm-hmm.
it works similarly where it just creates an opposing frequency or
Mm-hmm.
wavelength that would just gently
Mm-hmm.
neutralize or clear whatever energies we uncover. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's this really neat way to communicate with the body, and it's a very non-invasive,
Right.
gentle technique to just uncover what we would maybe not be able to discover otherwise.
Yeah.
It's like I could talk to you, but you're not going to be able to tell me if you've inherited
Right.
energies or absorbed energies. Like you might be aware of your own, oh yeah, I'm stressed about something,
Right.
but it's hard to sometimes uncover things that don't belong to us that we've taken on. So
Right.
that's why I really love using that tool.
I love it too. And I haven't done a lot with it, but have used other systems that are similar. And I'm just learning, more specific around body code. But I also like to tell people that are, maybe a little bit I'm trying to think of the word. They're just not
Skeptical?
sure. Yeah, skeptical. That's good. That's it. I was like, they're not sure about the whole energy frequencies thing, and one of the things that I kind of point to is if you look at a lot of the tools that are used even in Western medicine now, they're actually essentially measuring, you know, e- energy frequencies, electromagnetic things like, some of the heart uh machines, if you go in and for them to see if you have a blockage in the heart and all these kinds of things, echo machines and that sort of thing. It's essentially they're measuring energy frequencies when it comes down to it, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, and more we're seeing that more and more, and we're seeing that in biofeedback machines and all of that now. So it's just a reminder that along with a physical and emotional body, we have this energetic body that we know definitely exists,
Right.
and going back to the acupuncture thing, that's something that Chinese medicine has been aware of for a very, very long time. If you've known anything about Ayurveda, same thing, right? It's these energy bodies, and we're kind of just catching up, I'd say, in
Yeah.
Western medicine with those long held ideas and beliefs, and
Right.
kind of proving them with these machines in a way
Exactly.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's helpful to keep an open mind, but like you're pointing to, I mean, science,
Hmm.
you could talk to any scientist who's going to say, Absolutely, the body is an energy body.
Mm-hmm.
At the fundamental level inside a cell, you've got these
Mm-hmm.
protons and, energy molecules that are moving around, which is what gives our cells the energy for us to
Mm-hmm.
function. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, everything is made of energy,
Yep.
and we're just learning how to work with the energy
Yep.
of the body in new ways, which is
Yeah.
really exciting.
It
As
is. It
to
is. And I
evolve, we'll have more and more tangible evidence that can support what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that there are these different modalities that are happening, that therapists can utilize with their clients, and sort of these body therapies that, I think talk therapy is fantastic, and it's sort of level one in a lot of ways, right? It's like to
Hmm.
get to these things that are stored in the body, we need these other kind of forms of working with it. And yeah, I think it's such a beautiful thing when we're thinking in the context of emotional eating, of disordered eating, where we've sort of we've lost the connection to the body, we've lost the connection to our energetic selves too. And so you're really developing a different and new relationship with
That's really
yourself in the
it. It
process.
really is. It's
Yeah.
the path to healing is not fixing my eating habits and
Right.
fixing
Right.
food. It's about a return back to yourself and rediscovering and reconnecting with your body and like
Hmm.
really learning how to love and take care of yourself in this vessel
Hmm.
from a place of not from a place of like I have to change this to feel worthy and deserving, but from a place of realizing like wow, like who what
I
this
am
is,
worthy
this
and
yeah,
deserving.
exactly, like oh my gosh, this like incredible body and this incredible soul that I have in this body, like these things
Yeah.
are worth loving and taking care of.
Yeah.
And so, that's ultimately what this work is about, is the return to self-love.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And
Mhm.
because there's a lot of talk about self-love these days, but I don't think a lot of people really understand what that means.
Mhm.
And again, we go back to I want to focus on the problem, which
Yep.
in this instance is the fact that I am eating these foods that I quote unquote shouldn't be eating, or overindulging, or what have you, right? And that's that focus so often goes back to that again and again. And it's like that's not focusing on that is not going to get you
Right.
past the problem or healing,
But you're
it's
absolutely right. I had a client recently who, she said, "I think I'm starting to love myself," which was like
mm,
music to my ears. I was like,
yeah,
"This is why I do this work." But she never realized. She's like, "I never realized like how to do that." It
yeah,
was like
right,
it's so ingrained in our culture to like not like yourself or to be
right,
unsatisfied with who you are, that like the concept of loving self was foreign, right? And so
right.
sometimes when we say, oh, just it's just about loving yourself, for a lot of people that is
You're
a
like, what does that
mystery.
mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, it's just words and
yeah,
fluff, and the actual experience of doing that, like you do sometimes need someone who can guide you
yeah,
into doing that. And the
yeah,
way that we learn how to love ourselves is by someone mirroring it to us.
right, right.
And so for anybody who has a child that you love and you would do anything for that child, it's like that's the energy that you're wanting to recycle towards yourself.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
even recently thought, when I'm in partnership, I put all this energy into making really nutritious meals because I like love these people and I want them to be
Mm,
healthy. And then
hmm.
when I'm by myself, I'm like, oh, I'll just eat a protein bar.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
realized there was this disconnect. Like, wow, why am I not loving myself in the same
Hmm.
way, with
Hmm.
nourishing myself the way I would nourish
Hmm.
another person I love? And so there's little like ways that we can see examples of how we love others. And if we're
Hmm.
not doing the same thing for ourselves, there's an opportunity to like grow there.
Hmm. Absolutely. Can we talk about boundaries and how that
Sure.
plays into all of this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
What are you thinking?
I was like, "I'm just drop the bomb." I bring up boundaries again and again on the podcast and with my clients, because I know from personal experience and how I continue to have to work on boundaries consistently, right, in order to have my body feel safe and secure. And I also think that, there's probably that word's being thrown around a lot lately, but not everybody knows what that really looks like either. It's not just saying no, right? It's all of
Mhm.
these other things too. So Yeah. How does that show up in your practice?
In so many ways.
Mhm.
I mean, there's sort of there's different types of boundaries, but the two that I'll speak to are what I call body boundaries. And then
Mhm.
there's like your time energy boundaries.
Mhm.
And so for a lot of women, we see that there's this tendency to be people pleasers and overgivers
Mhm.
and perfectionists. And
Mhm.
it's like, I will, disregard my needs
Mhm.
and what my body's telling me it has the capacity to do to say
Mhm.
yes, to support other people, to take on their responsibilities. I'll do it for them to make sure it gets
Mhm.
done. Right.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that is like overriding your boundary of time and energy,
Yeah.
because then you're left with nothing for yourself and the body is run down and you're exhausted and maybe resentful because your cup is not full.
Right.
And so there's a need to, first of all, get comfortable saying no to the things that you don't have the capacity for
Mhm.
or that aren't your responsibility in the first place. And that
Mhm.
can be really hard,
Mhm.
especially for mothers to be able
Right.
to like give and be able to trust that this person will figure it out or learn how to do it. And they
Right.
may stumble as they go. And I'm
Yeah.
here, but I don't do it for them.
Right.
Right. I guide and assist like the coach watching a soccer game versus being a player in the game.
Right. Right.
And then we've got the body boundaries, which is how do I let other people engage with my physical body?
Mhm.
And this can be a really big one, especially
Mhm.
with disordered eating, because for a lot of women, we've had experiences where people have looked at our body, commented about our body, touched our body, engaged in our body in ways that made us very uncomfortable, that felt
Mm.
like a body violation.
Mhm.
And oftentimes we go into a freeze response.
Right.
There's an automatic fear response. And so our throat chakra shuts down. We don't say no. And this person essentially gets away with doing
Right.
something that inflicted a sense of not feeling safe. And over time, what happens is we start to protect the body with eating, right?
Mhm.
We like stuff down the discomfort with food and or to subconsciously put on a weight barrier to
Mhm.
protect us from unwanted attention.
Mhm.
And so if we're not asserting healthy boundaries, the body is going to create a boundary,
Right.
right? Through weight and through eating habits to perpetuate a sense of safety. And so this is why coming back into the body and reconnecting to the body is so important, because your body is going to tell you if something is like, you need to know how to listen to the signals from your
Yes.
body. Is this safe or not safe?
Yep.
Am I comfortable with this? Am I not comfortable with this?
Right.
And then can I communicate, hey, you know what? I'm actually not comfortable with you putting your hand there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you mind just like removing it and having the courage to be able
To
to
say it.
express what
Yeah.
we need so that our body, which is ours, right, gets to feel safe and protected and honored and respected. And other people aren't going to treat us that way until we're aware within ourselves.
100%, and we're so often not taught this at all, right?
Mhm.
We're taught to keep quiet, we're taught to just kind of go with the flow. And so many of us are disconnected from how our body even is reacting, right? And so
Yep.
that first step, I'm sure, is just reconnecting to how does this make me feel? And then you can speak from that place, right?
And
Such yeah,
so many of us have rationalized in our mind, and I did this, I had to do a lot of work on this. They're like, oh no, it's fine. It's
right,
okay.
right.
Or
The
we even convince
rationalizations.
ourselves that we like it. Oh, I like the
Mhm.
attention. But really,
Right.
your body is like, I don't. I do
Mhm.
not. I'm not comfortable with this. Like, nothing
Mhm.
about this feels okay. And we've overridden the body signals with our mind.
Yeah.
And we do that with boundaries and we do that with eating, right? It's like your
Mhm.
body's telling you, hey, I need like protein, or I
Yeah.
need like this food, and our mind is like, oh no, I can't have that, that's bad. No, I can't eat that,
Mhm.
that's not on the plan.
Mhm.
And so we have this almost internal battle between like the body's
Right.
very clear signals and
Right.
then our minds and what we're choosing to think or believe according
Right.
to, the societal programming or conditioning.
Yeah. Ugh, it's such a well of so much stuff, right? So let's talk about how you work with people. Do you work with them one-on-one, face-to-face, or do you do programs?
A
What's
little bit of
your
everything.
Okay.
I have one-on-one work that I do with
Mhm.
clients,
Mm.
typically for 4 to 6 months. But once I start working with people, we tend to stay together for, you start doing this work, you realize there's a lot there, as I'm
There's a
sure this
lot. Yep.
conversation reveals. So,
Yep.
I would say on average, it's for a year or two
Yeah.
that I tend to go on this journey with women.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I do have group programs. So I'll be
Mhm.
starting again in April, a next round of the group program,
Oh,
which
nice.
I actually love because there's an element to our relationship with food and eating, especially with disordered eating tendencies, that's secret.
Yeah.
Like a lot of women have shame and they keep it secret and they
Yeah.
think they're the only person.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I've seen some miracles happen when women come together for the first time in their life
Mm-hmm.
and they start to actually like have this confession, and it's like air all your dirty secrets and realize like, oh, I'm actually not weird.
Right.
This is kind of normal. I'm not alone. And
Not the
here
only
are women
one.
who get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we heal when we come together and we shed the shame through
Mm-hmm.
sharing our stories,
Mm-hmm.
and there's medicine in being seen and being
100%.
validated and being
Yeah.
held. And I'm really a proponent for co-regulation because
Mm-hmm.
when we're using food to soothe, that's a form of self-regulation. It's how am
Right.
I helping myself feel better, but that's not effective. And
Right.
really the gold standard of soothing is with another human being
Right.
through their nervous
Right.
system, through their compassion, through their care. And so in the group space, we have this opportunity that you don't always get with one-on-one to have
Right.
the co-regulation that happens in a group field of like-hearted beings who understand and who care,
Yeah.
and then you're no longer walking the path alone, and that's
Oh,
just really
it
beautiful
is
to be able to,
beautiful.
yeah, to create that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. I think it's so needed in this day and age too. So I have to ask, are you able to do things like body code in your group setting too? So do you
Yes.
teach people how to self muscle test, or do you do distance muscle testing, or how does
Yeah,
that
I'll,
work?
I'll do distance.
Okay. Yeah. What
Distance.
can I ask what form of distance muscle testing you do? I'm always
I
curious about these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I personally actually use a pendulum.
Okay, pendulum. Yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
That
yeah,
that I find is the easiest, and
yeah.
for me, I have the least amount of bias and
Mhm. That
human
way.
error that comes in
Mhm.
when I do
Mhm.
that. I also have
Nice.
another emotion code practitioner on my staff, and she uses the
The
finger
finger.
test.
See,
Hmm.
I've always been horrible at the finger, like anything on yourself. I just it's been a
I'm
struggle for me.
weary of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
I can
yeah.
do it a little
Yeah.
bit, but after a little bit, your body gets tired and
Yeah.
your mind jumps in, and I just question
Mhm.
if it's like, was that strong? Was that
Right.
soft?
Right.
So with the pendulum, it's
It's much clearer. Yeah.
way clear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool. Yeah, because I utilize it, often with clients just around if we're trying to figure out which supplement's going to be best for them
Hmm.
and how much they should take and things like that. So I was curious if you
Yeah.
did the test
Yeah.
before.
I don't yet teach people in the group how to do that. Although this
Mm-hmm.
conversation is making me realize why not? Like I probably should. But we can do collective healings, and with
Yes.
energy, it's one of those things where there's no real distance or time and space. And so,
Right.
we can connect right here via Zoom, and I can
Right.
also connect to your energy body.
Right. That's
When we're
an
just
that's another good reminder for people when they're like, well, I don't understand this. It's like the fact that we can even talk over these devices. That's all
totally.
like
That's
energy
usually
frequencies.
my
Yeah.
biggest sales point too. I'm like, if you can pick up that phone and call someone in China and connect to
Yeah.
them, like
Yep.
please explain to me
Right.
the technology that allows that to happen.
Right. It's all energy frequencies, even though
Exactly.
it's a definitive device that's sitting in front of me, the things that are making it happen is
Right.
all energy
Right.
signals to
And I'm
each
like,
other.
I
Yeah.
don't understand this device. I don't understand how
Yeah.
it works, but I trust that it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we
Mhm.
have our own, like, even more fascinating devices called the body.
Yeah.
So, I
Super powerful.
trust in
Yeah.
the power of our energy bodies
Yeah.
to also,
Yeah.
do similarly fascinating things such as connect over distance and clear
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, let people know how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My tag is at Sarah Emily Spears,
Mhm.
and that's Spears, Speers. So not like Britney Spears. Or on my website, which is just sarahspears.com, and they can
Nice.
find ways to connect with me on both of those places.
Perfect. And you said the next group that you're doing is starting in April.
We start in April,
Okay.
yeah. So I'll
Okay.
begin opening enrollment in March. So
Yeah.
it's
This will
getting
be
close.
really good timing because I think it'll probably
Yay.
be on early March, something like that. So,
Perfect.
yeah. Yeah. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for
Mm.
sharing your wisdom and your experience. And, I think, I mean, you have wonderful energy to do this work too. Going back to the energy aspect, just the sort of the way that you explained everything and your demeanor is just perfect for this work.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for for helping women, in this journey that they go through. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's
yeah,
an honor for me, and I'm grateful to be in the space now where I can look back
yeah,
and say it's possible
it's
and be
possible.
able to
Absolutely.
help. That's like just such a gift, and I hope something that inspires anyone struggling to know, no matter how bad it is,
Right.
there's ways out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks again for being here with us
Thank you,
today.
Christine. It was
And I will
great.
see you guys next week. Bye.